As promised, here is our second mystery for this week. You guys asked me to take a look at the lost colony of Roanoke. Many of you know about the United States, but many of you don't know how it started. Or some of you might. Maybe you remember American history. But the bottom line was that Europe in the late 1400s, early 1500s, Europe decided to start sending out ships to basically rob, pillage, murder, assault people all over the world, indigenous peoples all over the world. And this went on for quite some time. And by the time they were finished, they had quote unquote colonized the majority of the planet. And when they first did this, of course, they had to, send people to these colonies to live there, which I think is so dangerous. I can't believe they did that. But they did. And sometimes the colonies did well and they thrived. Everybody knows about Jamestown. Despite adversity, despite all kind of stuff that happened, despite murder, treachery, the town actually managed to survive. Unfortunately, the people that were already on the continent did not survive. Most of the Native Americans are gone. There are still some, but the majority of them are gone. So one of such colony was the Roanoke colony. And this is one of the colonies that did not do so well. Roanoke colony vanished, literally. They have no idea why. But I know why. I know why. And there are some theories. One of the theories is aliens. Some people think they were abducted by aliens. Some people think that they were eaten, that cannibals came and ate them in the middle of the night. And there was about 117 of them. So it's a substantial amount of people to just disappear. No mass grave, they could have been burned or thrown into the sea, but, nobody really knows. So today we're going to take a look and see what really happened to the lost colony of Roanoke. My name is QueenAusetHeru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. Also, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and pass it on to everyone who might like it as well. Please drop us a positive comment in the comment section. And let me see, if you want to get a reading done, please hit me up on social media or in my email. My PayPal and my Cashapp are also underneath this video in case you want to send a donation to the channel. My Patreon is there, and my Ask an Aquarius merchandise. All right, so let's get started. This is very fascinating. So the first card here, as you can see, is reversed. Okay, I'm gonna turn it around so you can see what the card is. You can't tell what it is when it's reversed. It's the King of Wands reversed. Okay, this tells us the situation they were in. So basically what it's saying is that the King of Wands, which is the leader of the colony, realized they didn't have enough rations to make it. I don't understand how that happened. I know they planned to come and do some farming, and they might have had some livestock on the ship, but I'm not sure. But still, if you know that you're going to a new colony, I would think that you would come with as much rations as possible, knowing it's going to take you a little while to till the land. But they didn't do that. So after a while, the king, he wasn't the king, he was like the leader of the group, basically, realized that they were going to die. He realized they was all going to die, that they did not have enough supplies. So he jumped in his boat and said, look, I'm going to go back to England. I'm going to get us some more stuff and I'll be back. He left everybody. It was like 117, 118 people. Two of the people were his relatives, his own daughter and his granddaughter. His granddaughter had just been born on the colony when they landed. So this is, this is a lot at stake. Your family is there. So he goes back to England, and unfortunately for him, there's a fight between England and Spain. So the queen will not grant him any more money, which is what he needs to go, get rations and then sail back to the colony. 3 years pass. 3 years before he is able to get back to look for his daughter and granddaughter. So that's the first card. The king was reversed. He had to go back. When he left, the people were still there and they were still doing their thing. Eight of Pentacles is right here. So they knew what they were doing as far as, you know, they could till land, they could make their own clothes. They had enough self-sufficiency to take care of themselves. The problem was that they didn't really know the land very well. And I don't care how good of a farmer you are, you know, there's certain conditions that cannot be, you know, if it's poor soil or something like that, a drought or something like that, there's nothing you can do. So they did the best they could, basically, is what this is telling us, to build structures and to, you know, create a colony while he was gone. But unfortunately, I am not exactly sure what happened, but they're telling us that a lot of the people died. You can probably imagine the elements, not having enough food, stuff like that. And they also were getting into fights with the local indigenous populations. Some of them, they were fine. They didn't have a fight with, and other ones they were. As a matter of fact, the same week he left, they had got attacked by one of the groups. But you can understand, like, if you move into somebody's neighborhood and start kidnapping their children, stealing their stuff, you know, they're 9 times out of 10 not going to be very pleased with you. And so there was often, you know, fights going back and forth between them and some of the other groups that were there, but not all of them. So right before the leader left, there was one of those such skirmishes. So when he came back to find them, you know, and they were gone, everybody was gone. Everything was gone. All of the things they had built, the structures they had built, were not burned or destroyed, but were taken carefully apart. And there was nothing left except one clue. On 2 different trees, there was carved, one tree had carved in it CRO, crow. And the other one had the word, how do you say this? Croatan? I think it's Croatan, if I'm saying it correctly. You'll see it on the thumbnail for this video. But yeah, that's what was written on the tree. I'm making sure I got the spelling of it right. Croatan. That's what was written on the tree. And the other one just has CRO. So there was a Native American group by that name that lived on a nearby island. So according to these cards, they were living here trying to do their thing. Clearly it wasn't working out. So something was occurring. Fights were occurring. That's one thing. And, you know, trying to do what they were doing on the land probably wasn't producing enough food to feed 117 people and things like that. So what ended up happening was the baby died. This is Virginia Dare. The leader's grandbaby passed away. And the people that were left over, the ones that didn't pass away, because like we see here, a lot of the men passed away, the young baby passed away, but the people that were left over did go with that group that I was talking about. I think it's the Croatoan people. I think that's how you say it. They went with them. And according to this, married into that particular tribe. So clearly, I don't know if it was a small group of people or a large. They were on that island, so I don't know how large the group of people was in that particular ethnic group, but they married into it. So that's an interesting interesting thing to happen. But yeah, they married into it some kind of way. You know, the people absorbed the men. So I guess the men that would have been left over, and I don't think it was a lot of men left over, but whoever was left over would have gotten married, because I asked about the men and they said they took them too. So they didn't eat them or kill them. They let them absorb into their society, basically. They married into their society, which I think is really cool, because it's like you let these people who came on your land uninvited and still, you know, let them, you know, come into your society and treated them well. You know, honestly, if the shoe was on the other foot, that probably wouldn't have even happened. They probably would have tried to enslave them or something. But this group of people was not like that. They invited them in, they let them intermarry, and they stayed amongst them. You know, they lived their natural lifespans out, the ones that were still alive. So that's interesting news. Then I asked about the carving on the tree. Who carved Croatan into the tree? And they said that, let me see, it's right here. One of the Native Americans did it. Because I was always wondering about that. I was like, well, who was that what, huh? But yeah, that's what happened. One of the Native Americans put that into the tree so that the people who came to find them would know where they went. But the leader, remember I said he came back in 3 years? When he came back in 3 years, he went directly to the colony. They weren't there. He started to ask around and scout around, and he finally found out that they were on this island. The funny part to me about this whole thing is when he first got there, he said it was dark and it was late at night and he could not go on land. So they anchored the ship right off the coast of where the Roanoke colony was. He said that he saw a bonfire right where the colony was. But in the morning, when he came off the ship to go find his people, the bonfire was out and nobody was there. So that's why the whole thing was so like, what? Huh? So I'm still to this day wondering about that bonfire. Like, who was that? Or was that just some person, was it somebody? It must not have been somebody from the colony. So it makes me wonder who was that. But we never find that out. But what we do find out is that it was one of the Native Americans from the Croatan people who carved it into the tree so they would know where they were. That's number one. And then I asked about the men and what happened to the people, and it says they went on. They went to grow, be part of this, part of this group, marry into it, and it says they were happy. So they were okay. All this time people were wondering, did somebody eat them or did aliens get them? Nope. No. And you probably wondering to yourself the same thing I'm wondering. Is why didn't the father go to the island? Because they told us that the Croatan island, or the island that they were on, and it's still there. I forgot what it's called. It's still there. And that group of people, they're not called the Croatan people anymore. They have a new name, but they still are alive and with us. And I asked about them too before I tell you about the father, because I asked, why didn't the father go, to the island? Because it was right off the coast of where they were. And they said he did. Apparently, according to history, the father did try to go twice to see if his loved ones were there. And both times a storm happened and he had to go back. So he never found out what happened to them. He eventually had to return back to England. And that's it. He never found out what happened to his family. So now we know. Now, this tells us about the people, the Croatan people. I asked about them, like, are they cannibals or what's the deal? Because people kept saying, that they were eaten by someone or they were taken by aliens. And these people are nothing like that. These people are sweet. It says here they're like magical people. It says here that seeing the potential for sacred beauty in all things, the belief that everything is possible. So this is a very light, kind group of people. They see beauty in all things, at least during that time period. I don't know what what they're like now, but during that time period, they saw beauty. They had their own forms of magic. They believed that anything was possible. They were kind of whimsical in their vibration. They were good people. They had a good energy. So no, they were not cannibals, and they were not attacking these people either. So whoever the groups were they were fighting with, it wasn't this group. Now, I personally feel as though if you go to somebody's land and start kidnapping their people and digging up their land and they fight you back, I don't really think they're the villain. But, the bottom line is that these people didn't have that problem with them. So that's cool. Now, this group of people is kind of funny because I asked, like, how did they, get them to go with them? And it said they basically just seduced them with, like, with things. It was like, oh, we have food, we have beautiful women, we have water, we have fresh blankets that don't have smallpox in them, So they had things that, the colonists didn't have. At that point, they had been there and 3 years passed. So, during during that time, that was pretty much it. So these, people didn't make them go. They didn't drag them with them. They didn't even ask them to go. They just kind of like were seduced by the fact that they had very attractive qualities. Apparently, they were very attractive people, and they were also seduced by the fact that they had things that they needed, because by that point, they must have ran out of their rations. It also said these people were very like athletic people. They had a dedication, to their physical abilities and willpower and strength of spirit. So these are very strong spirited, strong mind, strong will, strong bodied people. So they absolutely were not bad people. These were good people. And they absorbed them into their society. Interesting to find out. Very, very interesting. Now these tell us here that they basically they tried to hang in there as long as they could. This is the chopped wood card. This card is telling us that they hung in there as long as they could. They tilled that land. They built what they had to build. They did everything that they possibly could have done for the colony to be successful. They just didn't have enough stuff. It's like, if you can imagine, if you go backpacking in the woods, for example, you only have the rations, the water, the supplies that you've taken with you. That stuff is only going to last for so long. Anybody who's ever went camping, you already know, after a while, you're going to need more provisions, and you can't carry but so much on your back. So they did the best that they could with what they had. And that pretty much was the bottom line. They held out. But at a certain point, they realized it was time to go. It was like, look, we're going to have to move on or we're going to die. And remember, it snows in that part of the world. So I'm sure it was cold at certain points. The ground actually freezes at certain points and you can't grow anything. They probably could hunt and fish, but I don't even, who knows how good their hunting and fishing skills were and what was even available to eat during that time. So at some point they realized they was going to have to go with these, kind people that were kind enough to let them go with them, or they were going to die. So that's basically what happened to them. And they were loyal. They fully absorbed into this group. Like, it wasn't like, they were just kept captive or something, or they didn't want to be there. They were unhappy. No, they were happy. They were Two of Cups. And it says they were loyal in their hearts. So they fell in love. The people that actually made it out of there found love with these this group of people. I wish I knew how many people it was. It didn't tell me how large the clan or the group was, but they left with these Native Americans and fell in love and really, absorbed into their society. So 9 times out of 10, I think they're called the Lumley. I think they're called the Lumley Native Americans, if I'm not mistaken. And so I pretty much figure, based on this, if you do DNA, you're going to find a connection with the English that normally you wouldn't find. So they did absorb into this society and was fully a part of it, fully immersed in it, fully loved, fully embraced, and did embracing and was embraced. And lastly, when he first left, the people, all of them, his daughter and everybody, was thinking, okay, relax, everybody. He's going to go back to England. Everything is going to work out. It's going to be cool. But after it took 3 years, I'm sure they were expecting him back in 6 months. That's a long time period. But they were expecting him back in 6 months, and he came back in 3 years. So at first they were chilling. They were thinking, okay, it's going to be all right. It's going to work out. And then they started thinking, oh, snap, it's a year now. He ain't back yet. We got to hold on a little longer. So they held on as long as they could. Remember, they kept telling us that they were tilling the land. They were trying to do their best. They were building structures. They did their best. And they held on as long as they could. But you're right where you need to be. So after a while, they couldn't hold on anymore. And that's when they went to the island with the others, when was absorbed into their group, into their families. So that's what happened to the lost colony of Roanoke. It was absorbed into what looks to be a Native American group. So you can take heart any of you that were concerned about the colonists, that they did not become part of the problem. Number one, they became, hopefully part of the solution. And they weren't, massacred or anything like that. They were just absorbed into this group. But you know something, Native Americans, especially during that time period, from everything that I've read, were known for that. They were known for being kind, for being hospitable, even as these people were intruding on their space. They fed them a lot. A lot. If you look at different stories from the past, they fed them a lot. They gave them all kind of things, and they were very kind to them. And for for the treatment that they got in return is really disgusting. But we wanted to see what happened to the colony, and now we know what happened to them. So if anybody wants to go do some DNA on that group of people, you will find the lost colony was never truly lost. All right, guys, you come back soon because I got a lot more to say. See you later.